G'day. How are you? Oh, I see we're having trouble once more with the changing light in my conservatory. It's like it is a brave woman indeed who is seen in natural light. If you're it is of course that is of course if you're the remotest bit concerned about making sure you've seen the most flattering light, like some fading Blanche du Bois with paper shade over the light bulb. I, however, have no such pretensions. I'm here to read a bit of literature, and I read literature and I generally podcast with bosom unfettered and with my legs uncovered a lot of the time, unless I'm speaking of a very, very serious subject, because I believe in, as they say, demystifying the feminine physique and feminine body. So I have lipedema, which is why my legs look the way they do. And I have lost decades and decades and decades of my life to body shamers. I used to hide away and think myself unworthy of life on this planet, even because of the hate I used to receive for the way I used to look. And now I'm reclaiming my place, as it were, both in life as a creative artist who has always been an actor and a writer and a journalist, that sort of thing. But do forgive my yappy little dog. She's in the next room and quite unhappy about it. Daisy, there's a good girl. Once upon a time, when I was a journalist, I was terribly self-conscious and didn't like going to places where I had to do interviews unchaperoned, because I always felt that they would be the subjects of my interviews would be distracted by the fact that I felt like a human blimp. And later on, when my lipedema got really bad in my mid-40s, I was on the radio and I didn't go to public events because I didn't want anyone to know what I looked like, because I thought my voice is going to be the only pleasant thing. The only pleasant thing that people will ever think of me is the voice on the radio, and if they only knew what I look like. However, now I am emancipated from all that, as it were, particularly since I've regained my mobility after liposuction for lipolymphedema, and here I am. So, for those of you who are new, for those of you who might have just been scrolling the vertical live feed and you've come across me, my name is Mama Duck. I was born in Australia, spent most of my life there, but the last decade or so I have been in Ireland, and for 9 years of that I've been in my cottage in Mayo, and I'm very happy to be here. I've settled, as it were. I've put down roots, just like French toast o'toole's carrots in the Heidi box. So I have friends here, and I'm part of the stand-up comedy circuit, and I occasionally get small roles in film and telly and that sort of thing in the Irish film industry. So here I am, and here I stay. Oh, sorry, I do apologise for my dubious lighting. As I say, it's literally like cloud shadow and the way I'm holding myself. Okay, so part of lipedema is they've recently discovered, or they've discovered in recent years, that a lot of lipedema inflammation in your legs, which is like the swelling and the hurty bit, is a lot of the inflammation comes from like dairy and wheat and most particularly sugar. So I'm now down to herbal tea with a bit of honey in it instead of my sweet, sugary, milky tea that I've, drunk for 5 decades of my life. I have kicked the old sugar habit here and there a few times, but it really is worse than heroin. The old short. As far as addiction goes. So yes, so honey, herbal tea with honey. Alright. Now, for those of you who were around the other day, I read chapter 41 of Great Expectations. And so here I am, about to read chapter 42. If you are sitting comfortably, then I shall begin. I shall thank you once again, before I begin to read, for joining me on a Saturday afternoon. You could have been anywhere else, but instead you're spending your time watching me or listening to me read chapter 42 of Great Expectations. So, let's get on with it, shall we? Chapter 42. Dear boy and Pip's comrade, I'm not a-going forward to tell you my life like a song or a storybook, but to give it you short and handy, I'll put it at once into a mouthful of English. In jail and out of jail, in jail and out of jail, in jail and out of jail. There, you've got it. That's my life pretty much, down to such times as I got shipped off. After Pip stood my friend. I've been done everything too, pretty well, except hanged. I've been locked up, as much as a silver tea kettle. I've been carted here and carted there and put out of this town and put out of that town and stuck in the stocks and whipped and worried and drove. I've no more notion where I was born than you have, if so much. I first became aware of myself down in Essex, a-thieving turnips for my living. Someone had run away from me, a man, a tinker, and had took the fire with him and left me very cold. I knowed my name to be Magwitch, christened Abel. How did I know it? Much as I knowed the birds' names in the hedges to be chaffinch, sparrow, thrush. I might have thought it was all lies together, only as the birds' names come out true, I suppose mine did. So far as I could find, there weren't a soul that see young Abel Magwitch, with as little on him as in him, but what caught fright at him, and either drove him off or took him up. I was took up to that extent that I regularly growed up took up. This is the way it was, that even when I was a ragged little creature, as much to be pitied as ever I see, not that I looked in the glass, for there weren't many inside the furnished houses known to me, I got the name of being hardened. This is a terrible hardened one, they says to prison visitors, picking out me. May be said to live in this jail, this boy. Then they looked at me, and I looked at them, and they measured my head, some on 'em. They had better have measured my stomach, and others on 'em give me tracts what I couldn't read, and made me speeches what I couldn't understand. They always went on again me about the devil. But what the devil was I to do? I must put something in my stomach, mustn't I? Howsoever, I'm a-getting low, and I know what's due. Dear boy and Pip's comrade, don't you be afeard of me being low. Tramping, begging, thieving, working sometimes when I could, though that weren't as often as you may think, till you put the question whether you would have been over ready to give me work yourselves. A bit of a poacher, a bit of a labourer, a bit of a waggoner, a bit of a haymaker, a bit of a hawker, a bit of most things that don't pay and lead to trouble. I got to be a man. A deserting soldier in a traveller's rest, while I hid up to the chin under a lot of taters, learnt me to read. And a travelling giant, what signed his name at a penny a time, learnt me to write. I weren't locked up as often now as formerly, but I wore out my good share of key metal still. At Epsom Races, a matter of over 20 years ago, I got acquainted with a man whose skull had cracked with his poker, like the claw of a lobster, if I got it on this hob. His right name was Confrontation, and that's the man, boy, what you see me a-pounding in the ditch, according to what you truly told your comrade after I was gone last night. He set up for a gentleman, this Confrontation, and had been to a public boarding school and had learning. He was a smooth one to talk, and was a dab at the ways of gentlefolks. He was good looking too. It was the night afore the great race when I found him on the heath, in a booth that I knowed on. Him and some more was sitting among the tables when I went in, and the landlord, which had a knowledge of me, and was a sporting one, called him out and said, I think this is a man that might suit you, meaning I was. Complacent, he looks at me very noticing, and I look at him. There's a watch and a chain and a ring and a breastpin and an handsome suit of clothes. To judge from appearances, you're out of luck, says Compayson to me. Yes, master, I've never been in it much. I had come out of Kingston Jail last on a vagrancy committal. Not but it might have been for something else, but it weren't. Luck changes, says Compayson. Perhaps yours is going to change. I says, I hope it may be so. There's room. What can you do, says Compayson. Eat and drink, I says, if you'll find the materials. Compayson laughed, looked at me again very noticing, give me 5 shillings and appointed me for next night. Same place. I went to Compayson next night, same place, and Compayson took me on to be his man and partner. And what was Compayson's business in which was we to go partners? Compayson's business was a swindling, handwriting, forging, stolen banknote passing and such like. All sorts of traps as Compayson could set with his head, and keep his own legs out of and get the profits from and let another man in for, was Compayson's business. It no more art than an iron file. It was as cold as death, and he had the head of the devil aforementioned. There was another in with Compayson as was called Arthur, not as being so christened, but as a surname. He was in a decline, and was a shadow to look at. Him and Compayson had been in a bad thing with a rich lady some years afore, and they made a pot of money by it, but Compayson betted and gained, and he'd have run through the king's taxes. So Arthur was a-dying, and a-dying poor and with the horrors on him, and Compayson's wife, which Compayson kicked mostly, was a-having pity on him when she could, and Compayson was a-having pity on nothing and nobody. I might have took warning by Arthur, but I didn't, and I won't pretend I was particular, for where'd be the good on it, dear boy and comrade? So I begun with Compayson, and a poor tool I was in his hands. Arthur lived at the top of Compayson's house, over nigh Brentford it was, and Compayson kept a careful account again him for board and lodging, in case he should ever get better to work it out. But Arthur soon settled the account. The second or third time as ever I see him, he come a-tearing down into Compayson's parlour late at night, in only a flannel gown, with his hair all in a sweat, and he says to Compayson's wife, Sally, she really is upstairs along on me now, and I can't get rid of her. She's all in white, he says, with white flowers in her hair, and she's awful mad. And she's got a shroud hanging over her arm, and she says she'll put it on me at 5 a.m. Says Compayson, why, you fool, don't you know she's got a living body? And how should she be up there without coming through the door, or in at the window and up the stairs? I don't know how she's there, says Arthur, shivering dreadful with the horrors. But she's standing in the corner at the foot of the bed, awful mad, and over where her heart's broke, you broke it, there's drops of blood. Compayson spoke hardly, but he was always a coward. Go longer, this driven and sick man, he says to his wife, and Magwitch, lend her a hand, will you? But he never come nigh himself. Compayson's wife and me took him up to bed again, and he raved most dreadful. Why, look at her, he cries out. She's just shaking the shroud at me. Don't you see her? Look at her eyes. Ain't it awful to see her so mad? Next, he cries, she'll put it on me, and then I'm done for. Take it away from her. Take it away. And then he catch hold of us and kept on a-talking to her and answering of her till I half believed I seed her myself. Compayson's wife, being used to him, give him some liquor to get the horrors off, and by and by he quieted. Oh, she's gone. Has her keeper been for her, he says. Yes, says Compayson's wife. Did you tell him to lock and bar her in? Yes. And to take that ugly thing away from her? Yes, yes, all right. You're a good creature, he says. Don't leave me, whatever you do, and thank you. He rested pretty quiet till it might want a few minutes of 5, and then he starts up with a scream and screams out, Here she is! She's got the shroud again! She's unfolding it! She's coming out of the corner! She's coming to the bed! Hold me, both on you, one of each side! Don't let her touch me with it! Ha! She missed me that time! Don't let her throw it over my shoulders! Don't let her lift me up to get it round me! She's lifting me up! Keep me down! Then he lifted himself up hard and was dead. Compayson took it easy as a good riddance for both sides. Him and me were soon busy, and first he swore me, being ever artful, on my own book. This here little black book, dear boy, what I swore your comrade on. Not to go into the things that Compayson planned, and I done, which would take a week. I'll simply say to you, dear boy, and Pip's comrade, that man got me into such nets as made me his black slave. I was always in debt to him, always under his thumb, always a-working, always a-getting into danger. He was younger than me, but he'd got craft, and he'd got learning, and he overmatched me 500 times told, and no mercy. My missus, as I had the hard time with... Stop, though. I ain't brought her in. He looked about him in a confused way, as if he had lost his place in the book of his remembrance. And he turned his face to the fire and spread his hands broader on his knees and lifted them off and put them on again. There ain't no need to go into it, he said, looking round once more. The time with Compeyson was almost as hard a time as I ever had. That said, all said. Did I tell you as I was tried, alone, for misdemeanour, while with Compeyson? I answered no. Well, he said, I was, and got convicted. As to took up on suspicion, that was twice or three times in the 4 or 5 year that it lasted, but evidence was wanting. At last me and Compeyson was both committed for felony on a charge of putting stolen notions in circulation, and there was other charges behind. Compeyson says to me, separate defences, no communication, and that was all. And I was so miserable, Paul, that I sold all the clothes I had, except what hung on my back, before I could get jaggers. When we was put in the dock, I noticed first of all what a gentleman Compeyson looked, with his curly hair and his black clothes and his white handkerchief, and what a common sort of wretch I looked. When the prosecution opened and the evidence was put short aforehand, I noticed how heavy it all bore on me, and how light on him. When the evidence was given the box, I noticed that it was always me that had come forward and could be swore to. How it was always me that the money had been paid to. How it was always me that seemed to work the thing and got the profit. When the defence come on, then I seen the plan plainer. For, says the counsellor for Compeyson, my lord and gentlemen, here you has afore you, side by side, two persons as your eyes can separate wide. One, the younger, well brought up, who will be spoke to as such. One, the elder, ill brought up, who will be spoke to as such. One, the younger, seldom if ever seen in these here transactions, and only suspected. T'other, the elder, always seen in them, and always with his guilt brought home. Can you doubt, if there is but one in it, which is the one, and if there is two in it, which is much the worse one, and such like? And when it come to character, weren't it Compeyson as had been to school, and weren't it his schoolfellows as was in this position and that? And weren't it him as had been knowed by witnesses in such clubs and societies, and now to his disadvantage? And weren't it me as been tried afore, and as been knowed up hill and down dale, and bridewells and lock-ups? And when it come to speech-making, weren't it Compeyson as could speak to him with his face dropping every now and then into his white pocket handkerchief? Ah, and with verses in his speech too, and weren't it me as only could say, gentlemen, this man at my side is a most precious rascal. And when the verdict come, weren't it Compeyson as was recommended to mercy on account of good character and bad company, and given out all the information he could again me, and weren't it me as never got a word but guilty? And when I says to Compeyson, once out of this court, I'll smash that face of yourn, ain't it Compeyson as praised the judge to be protected, and gets two turnkeys stood betwixt us? And when we're sentenced, ain't it him as got 7 year, and me 14, and ain't it him as the judge is sorry for, because he might have done so well, and ain't it me as the judge perceives to be an old offender of violent passion likely to come to worse? He had worked himself into a state of great excitement, but he checked it, took 2 or 3 short breaths, swallowed as often, and stretching out his hand towards me, said in a reassuring manner, I ain't going to be low, dear boy. He had so heated himself that he took out his handkerchief and wiped his face and head and neck and hands before he could go on. I had said to Compeyson that I'd smash that face of his, and I swore Lord smash mine to do it. We was in the same prison ship, but I couldn't get at him for long, though I tried. At last I come behind him and hit him on the cheek to turn him round and get a smashing one at him, when I was seen and seized. the black hole of that shit one, a strong one, to judge of black holes that could swim and dive. I escaped to the shore, and I was hiding among the graves there, envying them as was in 'em and all over, when I first see my boy. He regarded me with a look of affection that made him almost abhorrent to me again, though I had felt great pity for him. By my boy, I was given to understand as Compayson was out on them marshes too. Upon my soul, I half believe he escaped in his terror to get quit of me, not knowing it was me as has got ashore. I hunted him down. I smashed his face. And now, says I, as the worst thing I can do, carrying myself, I'll drag you back. And I would have swum off, towing him by the hair if it come to that, and I'd got him aboard without the soldiers. Of course, he'd much the best of it to the last. His character was so good. He'd escaped when he was made half wild by me and my murderous intentions, and his punishment was light. I was put in irons, brought to trial, and sent for life. I didn't stop for life, dear boy, and Pip's comrade, being here. He wiped himself again, as he had done before, and then slowly took his tangle of tobacco from his pocket and plucked his pipe from his buttonhole and slowly filled it and began to smoke. Is he dead? I asked after a silence. Is who dead, dear boy? Compayson. He hopes I am, if he's alive, you may be sure, with a fierce look. I never heard no more of him. Herbert had been writing with his pencil in the cover of a book. He softly pushed the book over to me as Provis stood smoking with his eyes in the fire, and I read in it. Young Havisham's name was Arthur. Compayson is the man who professed to be Miss Havisham's lover. I shut the book and nodded slightly to Herbert and put the book by, but we neither of us said anything, and both looked at Provis as he stood smoking by the fire. And that was chapter 42. Dun, 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 of Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. If you have enjoyed me reading Great Expectations, then there is a playlist on my channel called Reading Aloud. And there's lots of other things on my channel. There's my stand-up comedy. There's my podcasts about a range of subjects, because I have a range of opinions on a great deal of matters. And I have the audacity to think someone might listen to me. And lots of things about lipedema, body positivity, and, random stuff. So explore my channel. If you like me, if you've stuck around so long, click like, click share, click subscribe, and all the social media links are on the About page of this channel. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you when you've got nothing on.